So this is a relatively, well, actually an incredibly short chapter. So for those of you who have really thought the reading is too much in this course, at least chapter 11 will be quite quick. And this video will be quite easy to watch as well. So the issue here, so we're continuing our look at quantitative research techniques, and here we're looking at non-reactive research and secondary analysis. What it means to do non-reactive research is look at things where we're not aware that things are occurring. So basically, experiments and survey research are both reactive because the people we study are aware of the fact that we are studying them. In non-reactive, the people are not aware of that studying or that research being done on them. So in non-reactive research, one thing we need to think about is how are we going to measure things. So one thing we could do is use some type of unobtrusive measurement. So what this would do is it would emphasize the fact that the people being studied are essentially not aware of what's going on because the measure itself does not intrude or is obstructive. So this would be something like, like I could look at, maybe I get some access to credit card statements, right? And I don't tell anyone that I'm looking at their credit card statements, and I just want to look at how much gasoline people are buying, right, with their credit cards, right? And the credit card statement might presumably say not only how much did they spend at the gas station, but maybe how many gallons of gas they bought. And so maybe that would be a way that I could actually measure how much gasoline is purchased. Also, though, what I could do is look at physical traces. This would be both erosion measures and accretion measures. For erosion measures, I could look at things where there's wear or deterioration based on the activity of people. So I could look at, maybe I'm wondering how much people listen to music using a I don't know, like an iPod, not an iPhone, but an iPod. So maybe I could look at battery usage, and with that battery usage, tracking how much the battery is used as a way to think about how much people listen to music. Or, alternatively, I could look at an accretion measure. So whereas the erosion measure, it's the wear that's suggesting the use, what I'm looking at with an accretion measure is I'm looking at what's left or what's left behind. So a really good way of looking at an accretion measure would I could look at how much people drink bottled water by looking at how many empty bottles there are in the trash or in the recycling or in the water even. Now, alternatively, I could look at archives. These would be public records. They're going to reveal quite a bit. I use archival records quite a bit in my own research because, again, it's a way to figure out what the feelings are of people without actually having to ask people what their feelings are, where they may not tell you how they're actually thinking. Also, there is observation. In an observation, what we're looking at here is how people indicate their social behavior here. So I'm looking at external appearance, I'm looking at behavior, I'm looking at how long people perhaps do certain things. Alternatively, and this would be done a lot in the humanities, history especially, English literature to some extent, would be content analysis, where you're essentially analyzing the context, the content of the text. So in content analysis here, I'm trying to code, I'm trying to measure what's going on in text. I'm trying to look at the frequency, let's say, of certain words being used more often. I'm just trying to see how the text is perhaps revealing more than just the story that's going on. And in this coding being this instructions or rules that I'm looking at, so how am I systematically converting the content into quantitative data? So as I'm turning the text into quantitative data, what I could do is I could either use manifest coding or latent coding. In the manifest coding, what I'm doing is I'm looking at words and using a list of words, and then to denote certain things, and then locating those words within the text, right? So maybe I'm looking at uses of words, particular words to indicate something going on, and then I look at how often are those words actually being used. Or alternatively, I could use something called latent coding. And in latent coding, what I'm doing here is I'm looking at how researchers are looking at subjective meaning. So do they mean something other than what they're just blatantly or explicitly revealing? Now, you do need to be concerned about intercoder reliability. In intercoder reliability here, what I'm doing is I require that there be some consistency across the coders so that I know that the analysis that's being conducted is reliable, right? So can I trust my coders to accurately identify what's all going on? Now, within that content analysis, then the question is how do you do it? Well, this is a pretty easy process in the sense that I develop a research question, just as you've done already in RPA number 1. Now I need to look at my unit of analysis and think of my sampling plan, all things that we've talked about before, but now the new steps would be I need to construct coding categories. In these coding categories, maybe I'm looking at words like war or race or phrases, and maybe like Black Lives Matter, right? I'm looking at certain categories, and I want to look at how frequently they appear in the text, where they appear in the text, what kind of argument they're being used to create, and I'm doing that all to support my research question. And again, I'm going to want to have some reliability among my coders, and then I'm going to collect my data and analyze it. So what would be the areas or topics where you would do this kind of thing? You would do this certainly in very large bureaucratic organizations where lots of paperwork is developed, where it would be hard to identify single individuals that are in power, where I'm looking at a larger organization, where they're using a consistent term, right? And the terminology is used consistently within the bureaucratic organization. Well, that would be a really good way to use this content analysis. You would also find that this kind of analysis is useful where, for instance, maybe I have a uniform crime index, such as the FBI has, where certain crimes are uniformly defined, tracked, and measured. Or in the statistical abstract of the United States, a really big text which tries to quantify certain things going on in the society. And then also, I could use secondary survey data that comes from geospatial data, looking at how things geographically or locationally are organized. Now, the only thing I want you to remember, if you're thinking about doing this kind of analysis in your research program, is that you need to be aware of the serious issues that come about from the fallacy of the misplaced concreteness. This would be concreteness that we think exists and demonstrates a causal relationship, when in fact it may not, because I haven't clearly identified the data. This would also be things where a limit would also be that the unit of analysis might not be as well defined as I think it is. That would also bring up concerns of validity. Again, I have to have concerns about the reliability of my coders, and I would always have to be concerned about missing data, just as I would in survey devices. Okay, so I hope it gives you a quick overview of non-reactive research. Again, it's not a huge thing in the social sciences as much as the survey device, which is why the survey chapter was much longer.